glad you're here. Thanks for coming out on a Friday afternoon. Liz Ricketts is a PhD student in our literature program in English, and I'm a professor of English. I specialize in 18th century British literature. And we are going to present to you some of the stuff we learned at DHSI this summer. Liz took the introduction, the foundations course in computational analysis. Is that right?
Yes, for computation for literary criticism.
Computation for literary criticism, and I took stylometry with R. And so we're going to focus our talks today on using computational analysis in literary studies. Trying to keep an angle on the classroom, but I think my presentation really lends itself more to research questions, but they kind of filter back into the classroom. So we're going to start with Liz as soon as she's done sending out an email to you all, because she's going to have hands-on stuff for you to do, and then I will take over after if you get a chance to work with her. Okay, so Liz, why don't you take it away?
Hi everyone. It's screen blank for a moment. So let me pull up my PowerPoint. Okay, first of all, my name is Liz Ricketts, and I'm a second-year PhD literature student here at USF, and I'm really excited to be here.
It's really nice.
I'll do it. And prior to coming to USF, I taught for 10 years in the public school system, both middle and high school, and I was really excited to make the jump to graduate school. And I am a person, after that 10 years of experience, I like having stuff, and I like to give people stuff that they can use immediately. So what I'm presenting today is hopefully something that you will find immediate use for. So I'm really excited. So I'll talk a little bit about the course that I took at DHSI. It was a foundations course, so I lovingly called it DH for Dummies because it was very simple, and the instructor was was excellent in showing us these tools and helping us to practice. And we did like a little bit of an introduction every day to various tools. We did one day of stylometry, we'll talk to Runge about a whole week. We got network analysis in a day, we got tools for annotation, and I wanted to focus on the annotation today and talk to you about a tool called Prism that I really like, and I've actually been already using it this semester with my students very successfully. First of all, we are literary scholars for the most part, so close reading is part of our bread and butter, and one of the things that we do in close reading is we annotate a text. So I was wondering, when we ask our students to annotate, what exactly are we asking them to do? Don't all answer at once.
Not a rhetorical
I guess demonstrate engagement with the text, demonstrate like what are the sort of clusters in a text that are significant, what are the keywords, what are the key points.
And what are the tools that we're mainly asking them to do that with at this point?
pencils and highlighters?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Pencils, highlighters, pens, they're writing down on a piece of paper. So they're literally using pen and paper with a hard copy. And so then once they've completed those annotations, how do they use them both in and out of your classroom? Yeah, and that is kind of the issue. Like sometimes we ask them to do them, then we don't necessarily get to use them all that well, or we're not quite sure how to incorporate them. And very frankly, as an instructor, sometimes I'm like, do the annotation, and then I forget that I asked them to do it, and then we just kind of moved on. What I wanted to ask you with these questions is to learn that we're doing this powerful annotation where we're asking them to comment, we're asking them to engage the text, and we can bring that up to another level and also include a level of computational analysis with that. So what Prism is a tool for crowdsourcing and having collaborative annotation where the annotation becomes shared, shareable, and quantifiable, which is really wonderful. So what I'd like everyone to do now is to get onto your laptops, and I'm going to have you all sign up for a Prism account. If you do not have a laptop with you, you can log on with a friend. So really the way that I get to Prism is I go to Google, and I just Google Prism annotation, and you can click on the Prism link. And it's prism.scholarslab.org. And so I'm going to click sign in, and this is where you all will get an opportunity to sign up. And if you're not so sure if you want to sign up, like it's really not going to spam you or anything, so if you sign up today, it's not going to hurt. Everyone just kind of look up and when you're signed in. So what I'm going to do first is actually show you a example that my students made in class, and I'm going to show you some of the computational tools that they used. So what Prism does is it allows you to highlight certain facets of the text according to what you're trying to teach them. So this is a poem by W.B. Yeats, and I asked the students to highlight aspects of poetry. So I'm going to click on font size visualization because that's the one that's going to tell you what the categories are. So my students chose to look at imagery, personification, and mood in this poem. So the larger that a word is, that means the more students highlighted that word for that particular aspect of the text. So students really thought red rose was an example of imagery, dancing silver sandal on the sea, also alliteration. And then if you click on the next one, personification, you can see that some of the words were also highlighted for personification as well. And again, the bigger the word, the more students chose it, and they also worked on mood. So then if you click on winning facet visualization, you can click on a word and see how many students not only highlighted the word, but how many thought it was one aspect of the poem versus the other. So I'm going to go to that silver sandal on the sea. So 50% of them thought that dancing was personification, 3 students, and 50% of them thought that it was imagery, 3. So that is a kind of an interesting way of seeing the way that the students are reacting to the poem. And the interesting thing, and I'll show you in a second when we get to creating our own, is that they can't see other people's highlights as they're doing it. So they're not going to be influenced by being like, I don't know, so this person thought it was personification, so let me just highlight that too. Any questions so far on the student example? Yes?
The question, I can't see if there are raw numbers as well with your percentages on that graphic.
Yep, so 3 students.
I mean, I know you knew that, but I couldn't tell whether it told you that or whether.
Yep.
Oh, good,
Right
okay.
here.
Now I see it, thank you.
Does it tell you who the students are?
No, it does not. Yes.
Do you create your own, so you assign things like imagery is this color and personification is this color. Can students create their own designation?
They actually created their own designation here.
Okay.
So the first time we used Prism, I told them we were actually doing Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, and we were doing Elements of Satire. So I listed them, and now they've used the tool so much that they're creating their own, and that's actually what we're going to do next. So I'm going to show you not only how to create one, but then I'm going to that's why I got all of your emails. I'm going to email it out to you and have us go through the exercise of highlighting. So I get to treat you like a class right now. Yay! Okay. So I'm currently teaching Lit 2000, and I shamelessly turned it into an Irish literature course, because if you've figured out by now, I'm an Irish literature scholar. So what you do is you find a text, and I recommend to go with a shorter text because Prism will only allow you to do so much. So I'm going to go to the home of Prism, and I'm going to go to Create. And then you will see the content box will be here, and that's where I'm going to highlight or to add the poem. So I'm going to copy and paste the text of the Lake Isle of Innisfree, and I'm going to place it into the box. And so I'm going to ask you to put on your poetry scholarship hats right now, and I'm going to ask you to choose the facets of the poem that you would like to work on together.
place? If it's too broad.
No, it's fine.
How about visual imagery? And auditory imagery?
Wonderful. These are great labels. So then you're just going to fill out. And unfortunately, you can't skip this part because it'll make you, it won't let you go on. So you put in the title and the author, and then you put the publication date, which is 10/13/17. Oh, I thought you got it. Well, the publication date of the Prism. Or, I mean, you could put the publication date of the poem. I always put when the I mean, honestly, it's just so
It's Friday the 13th.
Right? Yates is haunting us.
He was
so
He
happy.
loved that one.
Right? I mean, technically, he did write this whole play about how he was haunted by Swift, so maybe he's paying it forward.
There you go.
You know? So we have place, visual imagery, and auditory imagery. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create Prism. And then I'm not going to go through highlighting it because I'd like us all to do it. So then in order to send it out to your students, and here's how I do it in class so I don't have to bother with getting emails, I create a discussion post in Canvas so that the students can sign in right there, and then I just post it to Canvas and they sign in. But what I'm going to do now is I already have a handy dandy email with all of you in there, how wonderful. And I'm going to copy and paste this in. And so when you get my email, you should be able to click on the Prism and it will open up and it will ask you to participate in the highlighting. So once you participate in the highlighting, you're going to click Save Highlights. And if you mess up, don't worry, there's an eraser. So you can erase what you've done. And so I'll give us about 5 or 6 minutes or so to go highlight. Yes?
Can you add me to the email?
Yes, I can.
Jane Carpet.
And me too.
Does this have to go through Google or where do it? Doesn't matter.
Oh, I'm just putting it on here. I think you're on there, Dr. Rons.
I'm still waiting for it too. But my handwriting's so terrible.
You know what? I might have been an idiot and not finished. So here we go. If you haven't had it yet, stand by.
The email that you have for me up there has an M at the end for the
Okay. So hold on one second. Nathan Johnson at SFW and JT. I'll send it to you again, Dr. Runge. Did anybody else not get the email? Yes. Oh, okay.
I got this.
Great.
Nancy's working with me. We're a team.
Yay, team!
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. I got it twice.
If anybody needs help or has questions?
looks like you
Well, it's, you said short texts work
What do we
better.
do?
What's
Yes.
the character on that? Do you know? Or where do you know?
You know, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's more than, it's like about a page.
Okay.
About a page of text.
Yeah.
I don't think it likes tablets.
It doesn't like tablets? So to click a highlighter, you click on the color, and then, you know, a little pen will come up. Like if you click on place.
Playing models.
It does work with a tablet, it just took some doing.
And then like hover it over the
I see.
Yep.
I think this small modification.
So this is why I tell the students the categories the first time, otherwise it would explode their brains to try to learn the tool and
I think
do
this is
categories. But
something
you're all
in
so
history.
smart.
Oh, okay, but an actual geographic location.
If anybody needs
Be
a,
loud, be auditory.
Auditory.
Dropping, slow.
Feels in the morning.
Crickets.
Days on.
There's weird anonymous place. What Lynn is, or Wall. I'm Irish, so I'm a teacher.
That stuff that you stuff in some stuff in the place where it is coming through. It's clay. It's like clay or mud and straw.
I love it. You all are lighting these up like Christmas trees. You win? Sorry, I didn't bring prizes today.
You get a prize. You probably get a prize.
That's very cool.
So usually I'm nicer to the students than I am to a room full of PhDs, and they come in already having read the poem, or they read it with a group, but sorry. we got the big degrees.
So we can double highlight this
You,
Yeah.
you can absolutely double highlight.
So you said it happens instantaneously up here?
Yep, so what
Okay.
I'm in real time, I'm just
Yeah.
going to refresh, and then it's starting to come up. And so this is the winning facet visualization, and I'll wait till we're all done, and then I'll show you the end results. So maybe about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to do our computational analysis of the annotations.
Alright, I'm done. How you register being done?
Well, if you were like a middle school student, you'd be like, I'm done, can I go to the bathroom?
I
But
shot my hands in the air.
yes. Try your hands in the air like you just don't care.
Get a microphone, you can drop it.
Right.
Once you've done the first,
Or you could do jazz hands.
you've done the first 3 facets of magic.
All right, one more minute.
The third 3 facets of magic.
I love the categories they all came up with, by the way. Very astute.
I think Laura.
So we're being judged.
No,
no,
she definitely came up with
She had
place.
place.
She did place, I was gonna say nationalist mythology, but
Yes, that's very Yeatsian, yes.
What is the first line reminds me of something. Is it Proof Rock? I will arise now and go. Blah, 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 blah,
let us
blah.
go.
Yeah, let us go now,
I
you
think
and I.
let us go there,
Is
get after
Elliot
this.
going after Yeats, or Yeats going after Elliot?
But like Dr. Runge will tell you, you can do computational analysis with
Oh.
influence using R. So,
I
okay,
believe
so
you learned R.
I'm going to
I
show
tried to
you.
teach myself R and I missed test
You'll see it.
Let me show you some of these facets. So in this section, when you go to winning facet visualization, the dominant category for each one is the one that it'll show the color. But that doesn't mean that everyone chose that color. For Arise, one person said visual imagery. Let's go to Be Loud Played. So interesting, 4 people said auditory and 1 person said place because it's a Be Loud Played. The honeybee, 1 person said visual. Full of the linnet's wings, just the word linnets, auditory imagery was 4 and 1.
Wait a minute, how could I be auditory? Sorry, just questioning y'all.
I wasn't sure whether linnet's wings were
It's
something you
implied.
see or like you hear the
Absolutely.
sound.
That's what I figured it was hearing. The
And
sound.
see-
Yeah.
As you're
Yeah.
seeing, these are the conversations that you can have.
Asia.
The wings are
All right, let's do an easy one. Let's do late. Oh, you guys can't even agree on
Major points off on
late.
a quiz for not knowing that swan's wings made noise. So I have never forgotten that their wings make noise, for sure.
So for late, 3 people chose auditory, 2 chose place, and 1 chose visual. So as you can see, we're already sparking discussion about the meaning of these words. And then if you go to font size visualization, it's much more visual in terms of how many people chose what. So Innisfree is huge for place. So that means that, again, the bigger the word is, the more people highlighted it for that thing. Visual imagery, so then purple glow is really large. Clay and waddles is really large. Auditory imagery, Be Loud, cricket sings, lake water lapping with low sounds. So, and that kind of segues me into my next point with thinking about this. So how based on what we just did, how could you use PRISM to spark a classroom discussion?
One way is the way you just did. I mean, you had everybody do it first and then talk about it.
What else?
Word usage, what is in it, when is it used, or
Waddle.
What is
Yeah.
waddle?
Yeah, you could talk to the students about the words and like these really unfamiliar ones, and maybe have somebody go to the OED, which I learned about in Dr. DeSenza's class, look at these things. I've done it in a couple different ways. I've had students work individually like most of you did. I've had students work in groups where one person takes each facet and they're responsible for that facet. And then another time I've had them all post their links on a discussion board, and I've just put them in different groups, and each group had to do 2 other groupses. And we've also done as a large class. So there's really a lot of different applications that you can do with this. Also, think about how could you use this assignment to help students scaffold and prepare for either a writing or research assignment.
Well, just going back to your previous question, I think one of the ways I would use it is to put students in small groups and have them come and have each group come up with its own identifiers, and then talk about like ideology and methodology and how different students determined what they were going to be looking for, and how that approach to the poem might have influenced the discussion they had, and how 2 different groups would be looking at the same poem but having completely different discussions. For example, if one group was focused on gender and the other group was focused on place, their interpretations of the poem and the discussions would be completely different.
Yeah.
Or I could see like using a primary text and if you were teaching like different theoretical approaches or literary methodologies, assigning a theory or a methodology to different groups and using the same primary text and using the small group discussion to show how a larger group discussion can talk about the same text in different ways.
I like that a lot, yeah.
One of the things that struck me when you were going over this, obviously, is that the points of contention. So, and that to me usually indicates interpretive difficulties in text. And if you can use this to sort of highlight for students where interpretive difficulties exist, then you can sort of train them to see that as a moment in the text that requires greater attention, and not to just go away from it, but to actually say, okay, what does it mean, and how is meaning constructed, and then to actually work on writing a paper that way.
Yeah.
But it seems to me too, depending on the level of the class, this is an illustration of one of the primitives of humanistic study. Annotation is a word that's in one form or another, so marking things in origins, text, or adding notes of various kinds is what scholars have always done. So they could be, depending on the level of the class, they could be sort of logged into that kind of history and think about what it means to work, not just into because you're not really writing annotation in the traditional way. You're selecting text and tagging it, and that's actually a really primitive ancient form of scholarly endeavor.
Yeah.
And even just drawing a line in separate stanzas, it doesn't have to be what marking the text is for scholars. So that would be a useful kind of visceral illustration.
Yeah, bringing them into that long-standing conversation. I think I saw that, Dr. Johnson.
I just wanted to make sure, does PRISM do anything else other than the highlight? Can students write notes at all?
They can't write notes on here, and Dr. Runge actually has a really great tool called Hypothesis where they can write notes and use tags.
I use something called Annotation Studio where they can write comments and notes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have some of the multimedia stuff that this has, so you use them for different things.
There's drawbacks and benefits to it, and I think basically with this one, what I was really excited for was with my Lit 2000 students, I have no English majors, no English minors, they're engineers, they're scientists, and they really responded to the visual, and I got them talking where they just would not talk, and they even asked me, when are we going to use PRISM again?
That's great.
So it can be used for very complicated high-level things like Dr. Jones, Dr. Lukey, and Dr. Runge were talking about, and can also be used just to spark those conversations if the students have not been comfortable with literature. They think they have to come up with this profound, insight, and they don't. They can participate in this way. I think I saw your hand up too. Am I hallucinating? Maybe.
Me?
Yes.
Well, I was thinking, you can cut and paste anything in there, right?
Mhm.
So I was thinking about a news story, right? And critical analysis of a news story about, if you want them to be sensitive to fake news, things that aren't cited, things that should be cited, things that.
Be terrific for one, right?
Yeah, I mean, that you could really like problem areas where, the community might like not know what they're talking about and could provoke a discussion about fake news.
In the right class, even some of the
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, so.
I mean, the only limitation there, and I was telling Melanie that I'm not sure what the character limit is. It can't do too long. Like, it got me through about a half of the modest proposal. So you would just have to play with it and see. Like, it probably has that information somewhere on the website because it's a tool that's being developed by scholars in progress. But you could take sections of news articles. So like, it does work very well with shorter poems, with shorter parts if you're really kind of honing in on something. Yes.
Does it wall itself off, or like if we wanted to use hypothesis as an extension, could we just use hypothesis and this at the same time?
I haven't tried, but I think it probably can. Yeah.
I would think it would, because hypothesis just works off a web URL.
So you could do them together, which would be
Yeah,
really
oh, that would
neat.
be really neat.
That would be great.
Two tabs of things.
This is an annotation tool that proves it.
Yes.
It's a,
Sorry.
open access online website, a web tool.
Yeah.
It's right
I
here.
can show it again, if you want.
I can show it right now.
Prism is doing the data that's being put into it.
I don't.
Russians.
Let's go look at the about.
So the about, they actually have a really cool demo video, and so they kind of talk about the development a little bit. I haven't read too much into this, but they have a lot of information.
Where is it coming from?
It's from Virginia.
Yeah, UVA.
Yeah, Scholars Lab.
Mm-hmm. They give the contributors, the praxis program. This is being introduced also into the K-12 school system. So there's just a lot of great background. I've skimmed it. I haven't read too far, but I don't know about the data. I do know that there's tons and tons of prisms, because if you just go to browse,
They
save them all. And then like there's literally more than 858 pages. The one complaint that I have with the browse feature is that you can't search. So I can't see if there's already a prism existing on, the second coming. I mean, I can make one real quick, but if there was one existing already, so they have this is a Taylor Swift one. This is the example that they used at DHSI was Whitehorse. But I wanted to create our own and go through the process of doing it together. So there are these existing ones, it's just hard to search, and I don't have time to click through 800 pages.
Actually, it's interesting with hypothesis because it reverts to the eraser, so it's hard to actually find a marker for annotations and hypothesis because it just goes to the eraser function. I don't know, can you turn the eraser off? Even though it's the entire point?
I don't know. I think that would be more playing with it because I haven't tried to do that yet.
Okay.
But
I'll play it.
I am going to turn it over to Dr. Runge, but I'm going to leave my contact information up here if anybody is interested in talking more about Prism, if you would like to ask me questions. And it's really exciting, and I really appreciate the chance to come talk to you all today. Thank you.
You should.
And aggregates everything's
So before I launch into this proper, I just want to point out the idea that connects these two in some ways is the idea that literary text can be subject to computational analysis, which is something that is not often assumed, right? So we often think of literary text as subjective or requiring pencil and paper. What can a computer do with it? So in doing the intro to the computation analysis, what Liz has shown you is one, as it's true, as Steve has pointed out, that it is a primitive example of humanistic scholarship, but it's also a primitive example of markup. So marking up a text in its digital form allows scholars and teachers to do a lot with them that we're not used to doing in traditional literature classrooms. And what I'm going to be looking at here is a different way of using literary texts and the computer to produce new ways of looking at and doing things with literature, visualizations and so forth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the course. So Stylometry with R is one of the second level courses, and it was great. First of all, it was fantastic. And if any of you are thinking about going and want to do this, I highly recommend this course if Maciej Eder is teaching it. So here's Maciej up here. Maciej is director of the Institute of Polish Language at the Polish Academy of Sciences and associate professor at the Institute of Polish Studies in the University of Krakow. He is focused now, he's worked in Polish translation, a lot of translation work, all the way from the Middle Age, or from the ancient period through 18th, or I guess he focuses on 16th century. But he's now focused on a thorough examination or re-examination of attribution methods and applying them to non-English languages like Latin and ancient Greek. So this is a polyglot of all sorts of dimensions. He was really nice too, and just a fabulous teacher. So I put his website here, and I'll show you what happens when you go there. I don't know if it's going to work here. I have to go out. Oh, I guess it is. So the reason why I've included this, and I will make these available when we do the sending around of the link. So this is his website for the computational stylistics group, and the things that are useful here include a lot of publications and information, but also corpora. So when he taught the course, he provided us corpora by just downloading these, and so we work often with this small collection of British novels and English benchmark corpus, which had 100 English novels. So this is a small collection and a larger collection, and that's how we did a lot of the testing. What is stylometry? Anybody know what stylometry is? And what is that? Now you do, right? Yeah. Not just some of you do. The statistical analysis of variations in literary style between one writer or genre and another. He provided a sort of quick history, which I'll just show you the thumbnail of. It goes back to 12th century, and I'm sure that Nicole can tell us more about this. The making of the concordance of the Bible. So that was where these types of linguistic practices began. It also is used in studies in author attribution. So for up until the modern period, people didn't assign their names to the works that they wrote or translated, and so a lot of studies and a lot of work was done to try to find out who wrote certain texts prior to like the 19th century. This set of theories and tools, methodologies, was also developed through forensic linguistics, and more recently through the work of John Burroughs, Hugh Craig, and David Hoover. And David Hoover actually teaches at DHSI as well. Kristen could tell you more about him. But Maciej did not put himself in there, but he should have. So just a little bit about why this works, because it's important to understand a little bit about why stylometry works in order to understand what we did with R. So the mystery of bare function words. About half the words used in English are function words. English is not one of those highly inflected languages. And regardless of language, bare function words are the most frequently used. There's a Zipf's law that linguists use, which suggests that the importance or rank of a word is inversely related to its frequency. And the corollary to that is that the length of the word and is inversely related to its frequency. So it's the short words which have lots of utility in language that are used the most. And there's some theories about this. It's something that neurologists or neuroscience have, or psychologists have theorized that it's the least effort hypothesis, that the brain needs to reserve resources in communication. So the most important words are longer and take more brain power, but the ones that we use on a regular basis are much shorter, and we actually don't pay much attention to this. We don't give a lot of brain attention to those smaller words. So what does this have to do with literature? Linguists were interested in finding what's called the authorial fingerprint, or the stylome. And this is an idea that authors each have their own fingerprint in their style because of the way that they use these function words. And it has been proven that these can be identified, that individual authors have a unique style based on the use of more than just the most frequent words, which we'll talk about. It has to do with some other linguistic things that he didn't go over, so I'm not gonna. But the idea here is that these types of frequencies are undecipherable to the human eye. You can't actually read two different works and notice the use of and quantify or make any sort of claims based on the use of the small words. It's actually something that has to happen with the computer. So what they did is try to look for the most frequently used words in an author's oeuvre to identify this stylome. And now they look for the statistically significant similarities and dissimilarities between different authors in order to establish what that unique fingerprint or stylome is. And word frequency is measurable, so that's how they do it. There are other attributes such as syntactical relations, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. So, how do you trace the fingerprint? Well, that's what stylometry is all about. There's a linguistic part, and there's a methodological part. The methodological part is algorithms. I am not digging deep here. I'm just going to start to give you the big gloss here. But you can ask the computer to compare texts for the nearest similarity in the use of the most frequent words. Right? So, for example, you could set up a group of works and look for the word "the," and see how many times the word "the" appears in multiple works. And you could create a table, and a vector, or a line of calculations, measuring the frequency of "the" across the corpus. Right? That then could be made into a table of relative frequencies. How is "the" related to the whole number of words, and compare it to others. And then you could create a table of distances among the text in the use of the word "the." Right? But that's only one feature, and that's not going to tell you much, because "the" is a popular word, but it's not going to be significant enough to give you the stylistic fingerprint. So what they do is they take things like the first 100 most frequent words, or the first 1,000 most frequent words, and do the same sort of analysis, a multi-dimensional analysis, to find the relative proximity of texts in their use of most frequent words. Follow me? All right, good. That's good. I'm impressed. All right, that's how we do that. And we can talk more about that, but I'm going to stop there because you're nodding. That's great. So the next slide is R. We use R to run these algorithms, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about what R is. The link there takes you to that where you could download it if you wanted to. You don't have to. I'm not going to ask you to use it, so don't bother. But later on, you could do this on your own. So what is R? R is a sophisticated calculator. It's a statistics program. It's a graphics program. It's a programming language and environment. All these things in one. It's also free, open source, scalable, extensible, adjustable, and supplemented with libraries that are already made. Right? These are all good. And Stylo, S-T-Y-L, or to add these things there. Stylo, S-T-Y-L-O, is a library that does this work created by Machi. not cheekier. Okay? So what he did is teach us how to use it. He taught us how, using Stylo in R, we can run algorithms on text to identify similarities and differences in text groups based on most frequent words. All right? So far, so good. How does it work? All right. First thing you need in order to run one of these things is a corpus. So, corpora, I showed you where there's a couple of corpora available. And in R, he's also put 3 different corpora that you could just pull up with a command line command, which I could show you if you're interested, but we're not going to do that. The corpora that you want to investigate, you have to create yourself. And you can do that too. And you just have to place it carefully on your computer and in a file that you can find, because you're going to have to get R to get there. And then in that file, you have to have a sub-file called corpus. It has to be titled corpus. And then you can run these tests. All right? So I will show you. So you run Stilo and select settings from the graphic user interface. You analyze the visuals that result. It produces visuals for you. You adjust the tests for validity, because this is not a one-shot deal. You always have to test the results that you get. What it sends out is not an answer. It sends you a picture that you have to analyze. And if your results are not in any way valid, you have to create scenarios that create or increase your validity. And you repeat as necessary. Apparently, you can spend your whole lifetime doing this. Okay. So, this is just a picture of what it looks like. This is the R console, and you can see the red here is your command line. So in this picture, I've shown you that I've put in the command library and Stilo in parentheses, so that's opened up Stilo. I had already downloaded it or activated, I forget the word is. And then to run the actual program, I write Stilo with empty parentheses, and that pulls up this. And then you would take each one of these. So your input language here for me is, my input is going to be in plain text, and it's going to be in English. But there's a lot of options that you can do there. And then you're going to go to features, which tells you things. And then you go to statistics, which tells you what algorithms you're going to use. And then you do sampling if you want to, just do you want to control the amount of data that you're using. And then the output tells you what visualization or what sort of form your statistics will be generated. Okay, so here's an example. All right, so this one is a literary example, because they're all going to be literary, that I made based on Eliza Haywood's text. So my basic question going into this was, is there a stylistic difference between her drama and her novels? So I created 2 different corpora, and I ran them. Actually, no, take that back. The way that it's one corpus of Haywood's works. But when titling the individual documents, I used novel underscore and then the title, and drama underscore and then the title. And these are all the same, so they automatically colored it red. And these are all the same, so it automatically colored it green. So you have to be careful on how you title your documents and using R so that you get the results that make sense. Right. So you can see here, this is what's called a dendrogram. Have any of you seen this before? I know the DH people may have, but and you too.
Anglo-Saxons.
Oh, okay.
A few of us.
Yeah.
A few of them.
So when I used to see these in my initial forays into DH conferences and DH panels, I'd be like, I could never figure out what this means. So it took me a while to figure out that these are actually representing the distances between the similarities in text. All right. So this measures how far this group is away from this. All right. So this is the scale that they're using, and this grouping is one group because it's all on this line here, and this grouping is all in this line here. All right. So even though they look like they're right next to each other, they're this far apart. It's a distance. It's 2 different ways. Kind of, it's a challenge. But what it shows very clearly is that there is a very distinct difference in style between the drama and the novel. Not surprising, right? I mean, these things don't really surprise us, but that's what's good about this. I would have expected there to be a difference, and it shows me a difference. So it worked. Emily, what are you looking at?
Is it, am I reading it right though, that there's also a major split between like two camps of novels that might be more interesting to you?
Yes, there's actually 3 splits, which I kind of find interesting. But this is one major one you're seeing between this group and this group. And this grouping is also interesting to me. All right, so these are primarily all done in the 1720s. This was published in 1744, but it's for some reason it's grouped in here, and I would wonder, why is that one grouped in here? These are all later, except for these 2, which I would wonder, why are they grouped there? So there's some historical differences. There also is, for those of us who know Heywood's work, that she had genre differences that were very clear to the 18th century readers, but in recovering her, they've become obscured. We think of her as a romance writer, when actually she wrote political intrigue, she wrote scandal, she wrote high romance, she wrote several different versions of these types of novels. And I think that might be what we're seeing play out there, but I would want to go check that. And so this actually leads me to question things. But yeah, good point. All right. I see why when I said earlier, this is something that lends itself to research questions, but it also, I think, can help with some teaching moments as well.
I just was asking about the scale on the bottom, the 150 to 0. What unit of distance is the Manhattan distance?
Okay. All right. You asked me a tough question, but I'm ready. No, I'm ready. I'm ready for it. Hold on. All right. So I didn't even read my notes on this. I'm so proud of myself. Multi-dimensional scaling. Okay, that's what we're doing here. That's your MDA analysis. And 1,000 most frequent words using the Manhattan distance algorithm. Manhattan is your simplest formula, right? It simply measures the difference between all the values, that is all the 1,000 the 1,000 most frequent words, and divides them by the number of features. So you have the difference between all the values on the matrix and divided by the number of the features. And this is presented in the cluster analysis. And the cluster analysis is defined by distance in the sense of proximity. So these measure how close and far apart these are. Did that help?
I just looked up Manhattan distance too, and that specifically means that it's a grid, so it's horizontal and vertical, not crow flies. That's kind of one of the things that they brought out too.
Okay, I'm gonna look at another example. This pretty. This is produced by the bootstrap analysis, the bootstrap consensus tree. So this visualizes analysis of segments of most frequent word lists in the text to demonstrate proximity. So it's a different type of analysis using most frequent words, and it produces a visualization that shows you how close the texts are similar based on their connection on a single branch. So anything that's on its own branch is unique. Anything that's on a shared branch has a similarity in the repeated analysis of segments of that word list, or segments of word list in the text. And here, what you're looking at is a comparison of Austin, Heywood, Sarah Fielding and Henry Fielding, and Samuel Richardson. So I was looking to see what famous 18th century novelist is like, if Austin was like any of those. This is one way to do it. It's probably not the best way, but it provided a nice visualization. Because what you see here is that Austin is all on her own branch, right? And then you have Henry Fielding is on a branch over here, but he's sharing Shyamala with Richardson, which is interesting, because Shyamala is a parody of Pamela by Richardson, right? And then you have all this Heywood, and then you have Sarah Fielding on her own over here. So these are the Heywoods that are, these guys are all on their own. But then you have this grouping of Heywood. Now Heywood's anti-Pamela is not grouped with these guys. It's on its own. Right? And these are all 1740s here. And these are all 1720s. This is 1720s, this is 1720s. So it's interesting, and this is a really rough use of the statistics. I would definitely want to create more tests to narrow the field and get it more precise. But it's interesting. I'm just trying to show you what you can do with it. Okay, next one. This is my zeta using Craig's zeta formula. Okay, so what you have here is an analysis of Austin and Burney. Burney wasn't in the last grouping, but I decided to just put Austin and Burney together. Frances Burney is a late 18th century female novelist who is frequently seen as a precursor to Austin, and so I wanted to check them out. So I used what is known as the oppose function in Scilo. So this is built into the library, and it generates the most frequent words used in Austin's corpus. So you have to have two corpora for this one. Within you have your primary and your secondary. So my primary was Austin, and my secondary set was Burney. And then what it does is it lists, it comes down and it tries to list the preferred words in Austin. That's not the word he uses. Anyway, the ones that she likes the most of the common most frequent words are in the preferred, and the ones that she likes the least are in the anti, or the not preferred. So you have anti-markers on this one, on this axis, and then you have per favorites on this axis. So it's not surprising that Austin's preferred words are higher up here, and this is Austin, right? And that Burney's preferred are the anti-markers, the ones that Austin doesn't like, are over here. But there's a huge difference, right? There's a very clear demarcation here between these two authors. And another thing that's really interesting to me is that there are works that are, and these are segments, so they're not full works, but there are segments that appear very close together on this, right, in scale. And so you look at this, and this is Austin's Sense and Sensibility, and this one is Burney's Camilla. Any thoughts about why that might be, why that one might be? I mean, Burney's Camilla is all the way over here as well, but it's interesting to me that they are the closest in proximity, and this is Sense and Sensibility as well. So it's closer than the rest. Any thoughts about why that might be? They're probably written in the same decade. Sense and Sensibility was originally written during the 1790s, and Camilla was published in 1796. So to me, it's the one that's closest in terms of the works that are up here. Austin's Northanger Abbey often is a sort of outlier. It moves around a lot in the different statistical tests that I've run. And that I have reasons for thinking have to do with the publishing history, or the history of its composition. Okay, any questions on this one? Don't ask too many complicated ones.
Is this library looking specifically at just word frequencies, or is it considering other parts of the text while it's also considering?
Nope, it's strictly word frequency. And you can mess around with those lists, and you can create, your own lists using Scilo. But the word lists all the algorithms are based on how frequently those words occur. So if you want to look for specific vocabulary, you can do that. I just can't tell you how it's done. I could direct you.
So when comparing authors, how does different size of corpus per author affect where you're looking?
Their relative frequencies, so it's in segmentation of text. Does that make sense? Sometimes it does affect it, but it's minimized when we use this.
Segments are regular, are the segments regular as the?
They should be, yeah.
Across both.
Yeah.
When you put them in the file, is it a plain text file with the?
Yep. You can use plain text. You can use. I would pull it up. If I have time at the end, I'll pull up R. It's not on this computer, but I'll use my laptop, and I'll show you the interface, the different types of text that you can use. But plain text is what I always use.
Did you find anything that didn't make sense? You just doing the text and it just sort of you're like, this doesn't make sense, or I didn't know that, or
Those things come up, and
corroborating what you already
No,
do
so
that?
it's a really good question. In the studies that he did, he showed us, he liked to use gender as the subject, so that you could test gender. And one of the ideas behind testing different, tweaking different types of algorithms, or, culling words, or limiting the number of most frequent words, has to do with the idea that you have to have a known in this to figure out if the method is working. So, taking a known set of male and female authors, can you run a method and see that it works? And that helps validate the method, right? And so when he showed us sometimes that some writers would, not show up in that, and so he tried different methods and see, if the results are stable. See, when you have to run these statistical things over and over again with slightly different variables, so that you can test the stability of the answer.
I was going to just add, besides corroborating the method, there's something to be said for for confirming. It's kind of the right side of this confirmation bias. For the confirming intuitive, qualitative, insight about text with the most brutal kind of quantifying, and just sheer counting.
I will show you.
Say, well, this is what I thought, this is what everybody thinks, but now it's counted everything.
So I'll show you an example where that comes into play. And this is my final example using Stilo. So this was a different analysis called sequential analysis. And in this one, what you did was you took a corpus of one author, in which case I used red for Samuel Johnson, and a corpus of another author, Charlotte Lennox, and then I had a test document, the female Quixit, which was written by Lennox, but Johnson wrote part of it. And the question is, how much did Johnson write? And how much influence did Johnson have over the writing of this text? And this is one of those cases, like Shelley's Frankenstein, where scholars will debate through ideological lenses rather than through quantitative analysis. And the quantitative analysis can actually bolster up what we know, or we sense to be the truth, right? Or contradict what other people are claiming. So for those who claim that Johnson had a very strong influence on the female Quixit, I have here to say no. Okay, so this whole line is the sequence of the novel itself. So you can identify what chapters are in each of these if you go back and you put certain markers in there. I've done that too, but I didn't include that because that got complicated. So let's see. I read it. So what we learned by this, so the bottom is the signature, the stylome of Charlotte Lennox. The green is the stylome of Charlotte Lennox. And everything from this middle line that goes down in green indicates that her stylome is present, right, significantly. And the red stylome, or the red markers are indicative of Johnson's stylome, and so those that raise above indicate that that section of the text has some presence of the Johnson stylome. So it's very clear that this was it's entirely Charlotte Lennox. These are very small influences which could be simply about time period or something, except this one part. And it's known, scholarship has known, Charlotte Lennox knew, we look at the papers, we look at the documents, that Samuel Johnson wrote the ending of the novel, right? And this is where the adventurous, imaginative, demanding heroine is chastised and put into her place and marries the person that she's supposed to marry. So Charlotte didn't write that. Johnson wrote it. But you see, it's a nice way to use the quantitative or the computational analysis to demonstrate that. I was also curious about the places in the text, like here, where there's a real hole. See, these ones, they're small holes, but this one's a real hole, and this one's sort of a hole, and there's a little hole there. I'm like, what's happening in the text there? My next thing would be to try to identify those places and see what's going on there, to see if I could find a reason for the presence of Johnson's style. I started to do that with the workshop anyway. Okay, so the next thing I was going to say is that the use of most frequent words is a standard in doing these types of analyses of literary texts in digital humanities. And Jane Austen has long been the subject of this analysis because John Burroughs started that in 1988, somewhere around there. And his work on Austen became the foundation for a lot of literary computation or computational analysis in literary works. It's been improved upon, it's been built on, and so forth. But Austen has been subject to analysis for a long time, and she's useful because she has a very small corpus, and it's so well known that you can really sort of figure out, expectations of what should happen when you run a test on it. So this particular project I'm really interested in, and this is where I used it in the classroom. It's using most frequent words, but it's called Austen Said. So it combines the type of analysis that I've been talking about with the type of analysis that Liz did, because you have to mark up the text in order to run the most frequent word analyses to show how Austen's characters talk. And that's what this is all about. Now, for those of you who know Jane Austen, you know that the narrative in Jane Austen is very tricky. She is a stylist of the free indirect discourse. So characters are constantly speaking through the voice of the narrator, but I take that back. The narrative is constantly incorporating the voices of other characters in this free indirect discourse. So to mark up a Jane Austen text is in itself an act of literary criticism if you're going to identify where the free indirect discourse is, and if you can separate then the actual speeches of the characters to run these most frequent word tests on, which is exactly what they've done on Austen Said, and they've made it available for us to look at. So I'm just going to show you quickly what that might look like and how you might use that in class. So they have novel visualizations, and I'm teaching Mansfield Park right now, so I thought I would look at that. And you look at what they have here is a key for the free indirect discourse, which has been marked in red, and the indirect discourse, which means that somebody is repeating what somebody else said, but it's in dialogue, and then the intro to free indirect discourse, right? So the actual dialogue isn't even in this. It's not even marked up, because that's too easy. This is only the tough stuff, right? So for looking at Mansfield Park, the opening chapter, and I knew this was going to happen, because I'd been looking at Pride and Prejudice before this, and Pride and Prejudice has more free and direct discourse. But this book is very intensely narrative. The narrator is a strong voice, but when it doesn't, you can find it. So here you have the introductions. Mrs. Norris, tell them that. So they recognize in doing this markup over and over again that most of the free and direct discourse had an introduction that had the speaker, the person who is actually talking but is in the narrative, having a verb of saying, right? Saying, telling, all sorts of ways of saying, and then that. And when you had those clues, you kind of alerted you that you were going to have a free and direct discourse moment. So that's one of the discoveries that came out of doing this. And then you said that Fanny had got another child. This is more certainly free and direct discourse. That's why it's highlighted in red, because they also realize there are degrees of certainty of whether this is free and direct discourse or not. And here it says, this is all in Mrs. Norris's voice. Her eldest, she's reporting this. Her eldest was a boy. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This is not. This is in the Mrs. Price's voice. Her eldest was a boy of 10 years old, a fine-spirited fellow who longed to be out in the world, but what could she do? So, in other words, you see that. So each of these novels is broken down like this by chapter in these visualizations. So you can compare this to Pride and Prejudice, chapter 1, and you can see there's a lot more dialogue in that. So, what do you do with that? What's the big deal? What are we going to do? Where are the word searches? Well, you gotta go to the search button, which I thought was weird, but you could go to word frequencies, but it's not as interesting. So here, you can actually search all of this data that they've put up and get results that are interesting. So what's a word that you want to know its use in Austin's book? Give me a word. But wait, be interesting. Avoid names, they're not fun.
Marriage.
Okay, very good choices. You would think that that would be a popular thing. Well, let's start with marriage. Okay, there are 209 results of the use of the word marriage in Austin dialogue, sorry. Well, actually, it really is Austin because they include the narrator. All right, so you can see who's saying it, and then they actually they qualify the speakers in about 8 different ways. Let me get that note. I will tell you.
I think it's on the left-hand side.
No. It is on the left-hand side, but it's you have to scroll all the way down. So it does it by, it's categorized by novel, by the sex of the character, by the type of the character. So they created these categories, or like the prism, including cad and fool, which I love. Class status, age, occupation, mode of speech, that's the free indirect and the direct and indirect, and the speaker name. So you can break down who is saying marriage in Emma, and Emma's got the most. Oh no, I take it back. Pride and Prejudice has the most. What a surprise. This is in alphabetical order apparently. So Emma has 35, Mansfield Park 31, Northanger Abbey a mere 11, 27 in Persuasion, 64 in Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility at 41. Of the speakers, 67% are male, 67 of those are female, 44 are male. And the cads don't say it very often. Not surprising, right?
Yeah,
Heroines say it the most. Sorry?
Better, the fool.
Right, the fool says it a lot. And then it's the unmarried who are saying it more than the married. And married during action, that's the MDA. And then the widowed are there. Different classes, their age. And then you can actually look at the quotations over here and there.
Can I see another one? Just I'm curious.
Yeah.
Novel.
Novel's an interesting word in Austin.
There's your Northanger.
Well, you'll be surprised, I think. But, yeah, you're right, though.
Wow.
Northanger Abbey gets 10.
Oh, and only one of the others. Okay.
Yeah, because it's mostly used as, in Northanger Abbey it's going to be novel, but the reading that they do in Austin is mostly poetry and plays.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Catherine.
Except for in Northanger,
Except for
which is all about
Catherine in
novels.
Northanger, which is
Right. Catherine and Northanger Abbey, which is going to do a lot of, yeah.
So I see it does some stemming where it goes novel and novels, but like with married, would there be, is there a way, will it do marriage versus married, those types of things? Can you put an asterisk for a wild card?
I know we can find the answer to that question. I'm not, it's in the background. They do a lot of, what do they call that? They answer that question for you. I don't know it off the top of my head. But this is a fun thing to use in your classes, and it employs the tools that we've looked at. You can also, in the word frequencies, you can actually go and just pick up a character, and so you can see. So William Lucas, what his frequent words are. So he's got 11 unique words to him in all of the corpus. He's got 13 speeches that he makes. And these are his unique words: acquire, adept, bewitching, bright, circles, dislikes, inconsiderable, performs, refinement, science, and upbraiding. Right? Darcy is perhaps a little more evocative. That's Colonel, sorry. Where's Darcy?
Yes, fourth row.
Fourth row, second from the right.
Fourth.
All right. Oh, and you can compare them too, by the way. It sets up a nice visualization here. So you can see that Fitzwilliam has 26 speeches, 7 unique words. Darcy has 181 speeches, 145 unique words. So, I mean, it's sort of interesting, and you can see what the unique words are. He uses confession 3 times and offenses 3 times, and that's those are original to him. You could put Elizabeth next to Darcy, next to Bingley, you know, you could do that, you could do that sort of analysis too. It's interesting. And you can actually, what I like about it too, is if you wanted to visualize it, you can download this data right from those things and put them into your own visualizations, which is nice. Were you gonna say something, Steve?
I was gonna say, it hit me that this is the sort of thing, you mentioned burrows, and now we have this sort of thing that they did at Nebraska, and there were failed experiments in the 60s to analyze Austin style.
Oh, really?
From computers before. I mean, you know, one particular, like Carl Corver published a book in which the final pages said, of course, this was failed experiment. It's a Princeton Press book. At the end, he says, yeah, it's very interesting. We tried, but it's. Yeah, so it's so tied to, you know, availability of tools and an interested community to employ the tools. So, anyway, that's what you saw in the paper.
Yeah. Yeah, James.
I'm fascinated that even as Steve said, going back to the 60s, like people are like, okay, let's do stylometry, Jane Austen.
Yeah.
So is it just simply canonical status and limited corpus of 6 books?
Yeah,
or are there
it's
other reasons?
elegant when you think about it, and also her style, I think, is one of the things people value about her.
Yeah,
writing.
it's been valued since the time it came out.
So questions of style have always.
That's fascinating that she's just the go-to automatically.
And I've learned a lot more about her style by doing this sort of stuff. It's really interesting.
I love this site. It looks pretty involved. This was all done with R, like.
Oh, I don't know what tools they
Okay.
use. I mean, this is as Steve said, it's from the.
It's developed at Nebraska.
Yeah.
And people like Steve Ramsey on the team I see,
Uh-huh.
who's interested in the whole idea of algorithmic.
My ex-girlfriend works on this project.
Yeah,
I can
really?
ask her.
Are you serious?
She may not respond, depending on how she's feeling towards me, but she works in the DH library at Lincoln.
There's a technical information section I just haven't had a chance to read yet.
Right. So
They
they
built it with
use Ruby on
Ruby on
Rails.
Rails and
I'm not sure
XSLT
what-
transforms of XML text. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what Ruby on Rails is. Steve, do you know what?
Yeah, it's in the Ruby language, and it's just meant for this sort of web services.
So in other words, they created their own scripts to run these types of statistical analyses.
And they use
or-
XML text
Yeah.
and transform
To mark it up.
XSLT and whatever.
And Ruby on Rails is a lot more intuitive and simpler than R, right? I mean, R just is
Well-
very hard for me at least.
Well,
And it looks like they did their own XML markup of the text
Uh-huh.
too, so they did
Yeah.
a lot of cleanup, which was my
Yeah.
question for you, like,
Other
where are you
text
getting
sets.
your text for your corpora,
Yeah.
and what sort of cleanup are you doing?
Yeah.
Because like, if you're pulling from Echo, I would think you have a huge amount of error there.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to answer that question. So we could have I would love to have a whole like roundtable on making your corpus, because I think that when even Machi would tell me, I would ask him, where did these texts come from? And he couldn't tell me. He didn't know. He said, don't look too carefully. Don't look too carefully. Sorry?
Yeah.
Well, of course it matters, and that's what I told him, and he knows it matters, but for the teaching purposes.
Just to defend, I totally agree, and my training and everything tells me it matters. So I agree with everybody who says it matters, but I've been told by people who do this more than, a little, that on the other hand, once you really scale up, it statistically matters less, just because you're not doing close reading yet. You can go back and do the close reading to check errors, but there's a kind of brutal kind of function that
More
happens
data.
at that
It's a
scale.
level,
More data,
right?
data.
And even that's right. Even bad OCR, if you really have the astronomical high level, can give you something to start with,
Right.
and then you go back and you get the correct text to check what that is.
As long as they're using standard English letters.
That's a big problem for Old
That
English.
is, of course.
Oh.
No standard spellings,
Right.
different letters.
That's okay.
People have been
Different
trying
words.
to use stylometry to determine authorship. This gets really messy.
Yeah, no, it's got to be messy. The harder, it's got to be harder the further you go back, I think, because of just the differences in language, the ways in which language has evolved and become more stabilized over time. I would prefer to have a good corpus that you could identify what version of that novel is being used at the very least, I would love to have it cleaned up, and you have to do certain cleaning up if you use it from, the standard places are Internet Archive and Hobby Trust.
Yeah.
They have,
Google Books too, if you're going to do it.
right. Right, so there's quite a few books available out there right now. The contemporary world is a little bit harder, obviously, because of the copyright issues. But you can get them and then run tests on them. You just can't publish those back corpora. So it's kind of like being a scientist in a lot of ways. You know, I mean, it's like the data. They have to make their data available. Now you got to make you could make your results available without giving away your test samples, or something like that. So that's what I did on my summer vacation. Do you guys want to see hypothesis? And we have a few minutes left. I don't know if you guys are up for any more stuff. So it sounds like a lot of you already know it. So we can do a group presentation. I will tell you how I'm using it in my classroom this semester. And
It's really cool in the best.
Liz can tell me whether it works because she's doing it.
It's really cool too for like when you're doing your own literature review and reading of articles. I use
It's
it
cool
for-
just to remember which recipes you like on the web. That's what I want to use it for. So Hypothesis is a plugin that you add to Chrome. It will go on a few other ones, but there are some that won't use it.
It works best with Chrome.
Yeah. So I'm going to log in and show you how mine works. Let's see. So, no, that wasn't right. Let's try again.
Nancy, it works with Scalar, so what I want to do is for the Florida Holocaust Museum is have them add that into it so that people can add comments and this.
Oh, okay. So you have an account, and this is what your account would look like. On the left-hand side here, there's all of my annotations. So I began in June 2017 when I took this workshop at DHSI. And then I started again when I began planning for my class. And then occasionally I do it in my class because I am now using it, and I won't tell you whose this is. Actually, Mo. Yeah, that's mine. So what I do is I have my students. Oh, back up. It's also available as a plugin for Canvas, which is how I use it in my classroom. Most of the time, you can just use the website, and that's a public, or you can do a group annotation on a public website. But for the purposes in the classroom, I use it on PDFs in Canvas. So what it is the ability to add annotations. Hold on a second. I'm going to go back to one that's not in my class. To add annotations to
Laura,
yeah?
could you make the text bigger?
Sure. What just happened? Oh, it's not letting me go to the article that I had annotated. Oh, gee. Let's do that. All right, let me see if I can get another one. The JMX. Visit the annotation. All right, so I haven't actually annotated this, but if I wanted to, I could. Here's your text, this is your website, and you can do two different types of annotation. I could highlight a passage, and then it offers me, oh wait, is this still too small? Do you want me to make it bigger?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay. You can either annotate or highlight. So annotation opens up this window, and then you would so let's try that again. Let's do this one. I'm going to annotate, and then I could say main character. I don't know what that is because I haven't finished reading this yet. I haven't read this yet. I'm going to read it before I teach it, I promise. And this is characters. Okay, so what I've done here is I've made my annotation. It's connected to a specific passage in the website, on the website, and then I made a,
Tag.
thank you, librarian. Tags are important, and I could post that to the public, or because I've created, or you can do it only to me if I wanted to. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you so much, it's great.
I have two different groups I'm part of, my DHSI workshop and my Jane Austen grad class. So I'm going to use Jane Austen grad class. And I've got character, and that's my tag, and I'm going to post it. So now it is available to anybody who visits this website, who's in my Austen class and uses the hypothesis tool. And they will see that Laura Runge has highlighted this and put this character, or this annotation. What's really cool about it is I can go to my group, maybe, let's go back to me, and I can go to my groups over here, and I can start analyzing what annotations have been done in my group. So I would have thought that most of the classwork would be in here, but it's not all working out that well. So the Canvas plugin has some glitches, but for example, this one was recently done, sharing one's story, and I have all of these annotations and all of the tags, and I can actually do a search on tags. So if I want to see, and I was hoping I could do this more efficiently, but I was hoping that I could have, like, all right, so there's 8 uses of the term narrative technique. So I'm going to click on that and see if they show me which ones are using narrative technique. So it's outlined now, all the ones on narrative technique. So I can actually look at those. You can actually download this type of annotation and do work with it if you wanted to go another step and analyze that. But you can actually just, my goal was to have everybody identify the thesis of a scholarly article, which, as simple as that sounds, it is very challenging for graduate students to do. And then I was going to have a collection of theses at the end of the semester in the group. Not working out exactly the way I wanted it to, but it is a nice tool. And you can do highlighting and annotating and sharing, and you can create private ones and public ones. On the public ones, the potential is to really revolutionize the way we use the web. And it offers a type of public potential, a potential for public peer review that I'm hoping will take off. But as an editor of an open access journal whose note comment features have not been used very effectively, I'm thinking that if we sort of begin to shift the culture toward this type of public annotation, we can really have more reasonable peer review, honestly, because I think peer review right now is a toilet. Let's try to.
One of the uses I see of it for professors with students is going through the draft revision, revise process of writing a paper.
You could. I like my reviewers better for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, is it time to go? Is that what I'm hearing? I'm seeing people leaving. Okay. Then any final questions or any final observations? You guys are probably not applying to go to DHSI, so I'm not going to give you that spiel. But if you know anybody who is applying, okay, excellent. All right. And wants some information, Liz and I can give you, and Steve and Kristen can give you personal information about the whole conference. Thank you, Liz. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.